Hello and welcome back to Multifamily Strategy. My name's Christian Osgood. Today we're talking about the joint venture. I have used this to buy hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of rentals to build complete financial freedom. In fact, if you're sitting here wondering, why am I listening to a tattooed guy in a Bucky's tank top tell me about joint ventures? I have used this to an extremely high level to build a massive portfolio that built this house, built this studio, and ultimately got me financial freedom in under 5 years. You can do the same for you if you know how to play the game. I'm going to share a few rules with you on how to play this so you can go from wherever you're at currently in your portfolio to becoming a master of the joint venture. First of all, joint ventures are not for large capital raises. This is if you're going to have up to 4 partners. You should not have more than 5 people on a joint venture. Now, why is this? The law is everyone needs to be an active member. Otherwise, you're creating a security. You don't want to create a security. That means you have to file with the SEC. That's a totally different structure called a syndication. While you're allowed to do a syndication, I wouldn't do it if you're newer to real estate, and I wouldn't do it on a small capital raise. By small, I mean $1 million or less. You want to raise it from a few people. You don't want to borrow their last dollar, but you have a few people who have some money. But here's the power of the JV. With a joint venture, it is a business opportunity where you come in, you file an LLC with multiple members. These members each have specific roles, specific contributions, be it experience, money, time, the deal itself. You're bringing a team of people together to knock out a project that you could not do yourself for whatever reason. You might lack the funding, you might lack the experience, you might lack any of a number of things. You're going to build a team, and of that team, it's going to be a joint venture. Now, in the eyes of the law, everyone needs to be an active member. So in your operating agreement, you just need to figure out what is going to be the role of everyone. Now, if they're bringing capital, awesome. They need to do more than that, though. Who's maintaining the books? Who is going to approve large projects? Who's responsible for the day-to-day in the project, which is often you. What you need to make sure you do is in your operating agreement, make sure that everyone has a set role so that no one's just on for a free ride. There's no capital partners who just put in the money and they sit back and wait for their return. That is not allowed. What you can do is be the primary operator and the managing member. You can do most of the work, bring the opportunity, but if you need to borrow something from someone else and you're trying to put together a team, a joint venture is a great way to do it. So why joint venture instead of debt? If you just need to bring in someone's money, why do a JV? Well, there's many projects where you actually have something called a no further encumbrance. That means maybe you went to the bank or maybe you seller financed. Either way, they could ask for a clause that says, hey, you can't stack any additional debt on this project while we're financing. Right there, if I need to bring in outside capital and I can't do it through that bank and I can't do it in a second position loan, my option is now, hey, let's go out and get a partner. Let's play with the equity and the ownership instead of further encumber the property. There is no further encumbrance. It's just part of the ownership of the building. So I can bring in someone's capital, for example, or if it's bank financed, then maybe I'm newer and I don't qualify. I can bring on a more experienced investor and we can qualify on their qualifications and their money and their bank statements in addition to mine. So if you're trying to get started in this game, you're like, well, I don't have all the pieces. That's totally fine. Borrow them and create a joint venture with someone else who has the ability to move you to the next level. A fantastic example of this is a 26 unit that I bought recently in Stephenville, Texas. My buddy Caleb found the deal. He brought it to me, and I had us qualify for the bank debt as well as the experience requirement to get this thing under contract. For the bank to lend, they wanted a seasoned investor because there was a lot of raising rents and some renovation that went into this project. Caleb had the opportunity. Christian had the experience and the qualifications the bank was looking at, as well as I'm already partnered with Caleb in a property management company. It was convenient to do. Neither of us had the $400,000 we needed to put down to close this thing, but the price was beautiful. We got an excellent price of $1.6 million for a 26 unit building. Excellent condition, newer build. I'm so excited about the project. Where's the money come from? One third investor came in, guy that we've never met before. Caleb met him during pickleball. $400,000 to put into the deal. He invested. That is 3 people. Caleb found the deal. Caleb and I are the primary day-to-day operators. We meet with him quarterly and he approves the reno budget. We go through the numbers with him. While I do the tax filing, he actually is a huge piece beyond just the capital of the input in our leasing strategy, when we do our rent bumps, how we do the renovations. He's an active participant in the LLC. There's only 3 people, but we found the deal finder, the deal manager, and the deal funder. Everyone has an active role in the management of the property. There's a perfect use of a JV. And notice, Caleb and I bought that $0 out of our pocket. Now, how do you structure returns if you're doing something like this? This is very important in a joint venture. There's two main things. Imagine a sliding scale. On one end, high cash flow deal. I will pay them almost like it's debt, monthly distributions out of the property, often in the form of a preferred return. What that simply means is the money fills up their bucket first. Say it's an 8% preferred return. The first 8% return on investment goes to the investor. The remaining money goes to bucket number two, which is divided among all three of us based on our equity in the deal. So I get some cash flow, but they get the lion's share of the cash flow because they put in the money, they have the financial risk. You keep doing this, generally speaking, until their initial capital is returned, and then you either split pro rata or in proportion to the equity that you have, or you put in a buyout option and you buy them out in the future. I'll get into that in a minute. The other option to compensate them, imagine you have a deal like this 26 unit where the rents were very, very low, but it was very easy to raise them over time. Day one, there's not a lot of cash flow. There was cash flow, but there wasn't a lot. There's a ton of value add. This thing should be worth $2.8 million if it was bringing in the rents that it should be today. Well, when you have $1 million of upside, you compensate them out of the $1 million of upside, not out of the little cash flow you have. Protect the cash flow, go for the upside. In this case, they're going to multiply their money, and there's a buyout option in place that says, hey, once this deal appraises for what it needs to, we have an exclusive right. You put in 400 within the first 3 years, we have the right to buy you out at 600,000, which we are very, very, very confident that we can go to the bank, do the cash out refinance, pull out his initial capital plus another 50%. And now we own the deal all by ourselves. We have a cash flowing asset. It's paid everyone throughout the entire project. He got a return. We got a building. Everyone was active. Everyone's happy. That is a good use for a joint venture. The equity multiple lives on one side. The cash flow and preferred return lives on the other. Anywhere between those two goalposts, if you compensate them completely out of future upside, generally speaking, double their money every 4 or 5 years. That's about where this goalpost is. On this side, preferred returns of 10 to 12% if that is their only compensation, and a future buyout at principal value. You can slide that bar anywhere in between to adjust. So maybe you do an 8% preferred return and a 50% bump on their money at the end of year 4. Something along those lines. If you're wondering where the goalposts are, they're generally somewhere between those two endpoints. Now, the most important thing when you're doing a joint venture is, remember, you want limited variables. When you bring in new people, while you do get to borrow their experience, their capital, potentially their time in running this deal, people are variables. They're not fixed like your debt. They can change their mind. They can have feelings. They can have opinions. All of these can cause conflict. When you write your operating agreement, there's a few things it's going to say. So every LLC has an operating agreement. What does that operating agreement do? Well, it lays out who contributed what capital. What are all the active roles of every member? You guys need that. How are we handling cash distributions? How are we going to be filing our taxes? It has a lot of the basics like that. One of the things that you need to nail is your dispute resolution. One of the most painful things that have ever happened to me in real estate is a very, very, very costly legal battle in which I was right, but it cost me a ton of money to defend myself being right in court to the other partners. Little backstory, they expected that I would personally compensate them for every month of vacancy while we were renovating a building. Why they thought that, I don't know. That's crazy. But as the property manager, like, it's your job to keep it full. So I want you to compensate me personally for every month it's vacant. Now, while that's crazy, it cost me tens of thousands of dollars to defend my position in court. And ultimately, I ended up just writing a $10,000 check to end the legal madness and just move on. How do you avoid this in the future, and how do you keep these succinct? I have a 4-step process in every single operating agreement. You can copy the same thing in yours. Disclaimer, yes, I'm not a lawyer. Get your own legal counsel, but this has worked very well for me. Number one, we have an obligation to discuss as partners, either over a Zoom call, in person, or on the phone. There's an obligation when we have conflict to discuss as human beings and as adults. In the event that that is not fruitful, the party that has the complaint or the disagreement gives written notice, and I have 14 days minimum to respond in writing to their complaint. So in this case, they would have wrote a complaint. Well, while we were renovating units that had bed bug infestations, I think you should have kept these buildings full. I want you to pay me. And I could have given them a letter back that said, no, you're insane, which would push us to number 3, mediation. Now, what is mediation? You typically have a judge who you will schedule a time with, and you and your legal counsel and they and their legal counsel will enter a room. You guys don't actually see each other. You guys are in usually a virtual chat room, but you guys are separated. You don't talk to each other. One party speaks to the mediator, then they jump to the other party, and back and forth and back and forth. And what they're doing is they're helping come up with conflict resolution. Now, in a mediation, everyone has to agree on the result. There's no judgment being passed. They're trying to facilitate a negotiation and avoid the ultimate bad thing, arbitration. Arbitration sucks. If you want to know what to expect, even if your contract says that the prevailing party gets their legal fees covered by the losing party, it's often not enforced. You typically are going to spend at least $100,000 to go all the way through an arbitration in legal fees with discovery, with court dates, with it gets ludicrous. You want to avoid this like the plague. Unless you guys are arguing over millions and millions of dollars, you are going to lose way more money going to an arbitration than you're going to win in actually winning the negotiation or the arbitration with your partner. That is last, and it has to be preceded by all of the other steps, including mediation. I want to make sure that we have exhausted all options before we get into an actual legal battle with one of our partners. Now, with all these things in mind, joint ventures are usually fantastic. I have done about 20 of them, and 19 of them have gone very, very well. While I had one that went sour, I'll leave you guys with a final thought. The only one that ever went sour was the only time I ever invested with a personal friend who I was not previously in business with. There's one thing I know for sure. Money will change relationships. I've seen it make them stronger and better when people go into business together. I've seen it make them worse and partnerships and relationships fall apart, like what happened to me. But the fact is, money will change the relationship you have. So if you want to keep this simple, you want to move forward and you want the minimum amount of drama, don't introduce money into a relationship that you're not willing to change. Because if it changes negatively, it really can be quite devastating. Outside of that, partner with great people, partner with people whose pieces move you forward, who you know, like, and trust. And don't be shy about using the joint venture to expand beyond your current economic situation. If your goals in real estate are larger than the money in your bank account today, the joint venture is the simplest contract with the least moving parts and the least expenses that you can possibly use to take out a ton of real estate. Remember, just keep it to 5 or less total partners in the LLC. Make sure everyone has an active role. Don't partner with your friends or family, and you should be good to go. As always, do me a favor. You've already watched this whole video. Go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. We share a lot more tips than just how to use the perfect joint venture. We talk about creative finance. We talk about deal structure. We talk about different partnership structures. You want to keep learning how to play the game at the highest level. Multifamily strategy. I'll see you on the next episode.